This is the black genius who solved what Newton couldn't. Hi, it's me and this is our channel. Before we get started, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload. Also, stick around until the end of the video, because we have a special announcement that you won't want to miss. So imagine it's 1760, and you've been working as a farmhand in rural Maryland since you were 8 years old. Despite never having attended school, you've taught yourself how to read, write, and do basic math by poring over textbooks left behind by your former owner. And one day you decide you want to make a clock. You don't know how to make a clock, but you do know that clocks are complex machines governed by springs, gears, and pendulums. So you dissect every clock in town, studying their inner workings before finally returning to your farm and building a wooden box. Then inside that box, you fashion your own clock, one completely from scratch, all without ever having received formal training in engineering or machining. By the time you open that box, you're not just revealing a clock, you're announcing the arrival of America's first black scientist. In this video, we'll explore the fascinating story of Benjamin Banneker, covering everything from his humble beginnings as a slave on a Maryland plantation to his stunning scientific breakthrough and his crucial role in planning the very streets you might be watching these words on right now. Benjamin Banneker was born in 1731 on the outskirts of Baltimore, Maryland. At the time, Anne Arundel County, Maryland, was a small cluster of farms and plantations surrounded by rolling tobacco fields and forests inhabited by the indigenous people of the region. In a few decades, it would become part of the District of Columbia, the very heart of the United States of America. But for now, it was a place of trees and creeks, a place where young Benny could run free and where life was hard. You see, Benny's parents had been born into slavery, and despite being manumission, meaning they were no longer enslaved, their children would continue to bear the shackles of servitude. While Benny's mother was able to purchase her freedom, his father remained enslaved and would pass on stories of Africa to his children, stories of a homeland filled with palaces, gold, and power, stories that would shape his son's view of the world long into the future. By the age of 8, Ben had been sold away from his family and placed into service on a plantation owned by William and Margaret Bordley Dennis, a wealthy, childless couple who doted on their enslaved workers, allowing them freedoms unheard of in other Maryland households. Benny's job was simple. He helped with everyday chores like cooking, cleaning, and gardening. But any spare moment he had was spent exploring the wilderness surrounding the plantation. It was there he learned to hunt and fish, developing a keen understanding of the natural world that would later inform his scientific thinking. When Benny was 12, the Dennis took him into town and enrolled him in a private tutor, a local carpenter named Thomas Bladen, who would teach him the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. After just a few weeks, however, William Dennis passed away and his widow moved to Philadelphia, ending Benny's formal education. Upon his return to the plantation, Ben continued to work while teaching himself advanced math and astronomy by devouring books left behind by Mr. Bladen. By age 22, his mechanical genius had reached such a point that he decided to build a clock. As previously mentioned, he disassembled every clock in the area, committing their inner workings to memory before building his own from wood. When he opened the box containing his creation, the other slaves nearby stopped what they were doing and gathered around, curious to see what he'd made. When the clock began ticking, the reaction was electric. No one had ever built a clock before, let alone one out of nothing. Benny had impressed everyone, but most of all, he'd impressed himself. And that brings us to a pivotal moment in Banneker's life. Up until this point, he'd simply done what needed to be done. But now that he'd mastered a new skill, he wanted to master more. He wanted to pursue science. The problem was that though he'd taught himself math and mechanical arts, He lacked the formal education required to advance his knowledge, so he did what he always did. He found books on the subject he wanted to learn about and taught himself. After reading a book on astronomy called the British Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society, Ben developed an interest in ephemerides. An ephemeris is basically a chart that predicts the positions of celestial bodies, like the moon and planets, over a span of time. They're essential to navigation and understanding the cosmos, but they're also incredibly complex to produce, requiring advanced mathematics and a vast understanding of physics. At this point, Banneker was essentially a nobody, a black, self-educated farmer whose most notable accomplishment was building a clock. Yet he soon proved that when it comes to intellect, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. All that matters is what you know and what you can prove. For the next 10 years, Banneker devoted himself to the study of astronomy, teaching himself the necessary math along the way. His goal was to produce his own ephemeris, one that would demonstrate his brilliance and perhaps change the world. But what does a self-educated black farmer do when he needs help? Well, he reaches out to the smartest man in the world, obviously. So Banneker wrote a letter to a prominent scientist in Philadelphia, asking for advice. To his surprise, he got a reply, but it wasn't the answer he'd hoped for. The scientist told him that such an ambitious project was beyond the capacity of anyone living, adding that even if he, Banneker, had the mathematical ability to complete the task, no one would take his work seriously simply because he was black. But instead of accepting the harsh reality laid out before him, Banneker defied it. He poured himself into his work, determined to prove his doubters wrong. In 1772, Banneker submitted his almanac to a scientific society for review. The president of the group, John Bartram, was shocked by what he saw. Banneker's predictions of the moon's motion were more accurate than those of some of the leading astronomers in Europe. It was a groundbreaking achievement and one that would make Banneker famous overnight. But the story doesn't end there. That same year, something amazing happened. An annular solar eclipse occurred, one that was predicted exactly 3 days earlier by Banneker in his almanac. News of his prediction spread throughout the colonies, cementing his reputation as a scientist. Banneker would go on to publish several more almanacs, each of which refined his theories and calculations regarding celestial motion. He'd essentially done what Newton couldn't, proving that the moon sometimes moves faster than predicted and that its speed increases closer to sunset. In fact, his observations would go on to correct centuries-old errors, clarifying why lunar motion is irregular. But while Banneker's scientific work earned him international acclaim, it also attracted the attention of the US government. As many of you probably already know, the newly formed United States of America hired French military engineer Pierre L'Enfant to design the nation's capital. Unfortunately, after hitting a few snags with the federal government, L'Enfant abruptly quit and took the original plans with him. With construction already underway, this left the country without a map, a problem President George Washington didn't know how to solve. That's where Banneker came in. Upon hearing of the crisis, he volunteered his services, and with just 2 weeks to get the job done, he set to work. Spending nearly every waking hour poring over Landon's notes, Banneker eventually recreated the entire plan for Washington, D.C. from memory, including the location of every street, park, and public building. It was a pivotal moment in American history, and Banneker played a key role in shaping the nation's capital. But that's not where the story ends. You see, Banneker's talents didn't end with science. In fact, he was an accomplished surveyor and mathematician, skills he used to settle land disputes, determine property lines, and ensure fair labor wages for others. He was also an early civil rights activist, perhaps best known for his letter to Thomas Jefferson, in which he urged the founding father to recognize the humanity of black Americans and abolish slavery. As he wrote, "I have it from good authority that there are at least 1,000 gentlemen in the United States who are deriving their income from the labor of their slaves, and that in some parts of our state, the number is not less than 1 in 10. Is it not strange, sir, that in a country where the laws lay such strong emphasis on the rights of property, that these men can, with a clear conscience, enjoy the fruits of human misery?" While Jefferson ultimately failed to heed his warning, banning Niger's activism undoubtedly helped pave the way for future generations. Though he died believing America would fail to live up to its ideals of liberty and equality, his scientific contributions cannot be denied. Benjamin Banneker was a true polymath, a man whose interests spanned agriculture, civil rights, engineering, law, mathematics, navigation, philosophy, science, and surveying. He was the very definition of a Renaissance man, someone who used his talents not just to achieve personal success, but to benefit others. His story is a reminder that it's never too late to learn and that your mind is your greatest tool. Now it's time to hear from you. Which of Benjamin Banneker's accomplishments impressed you most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more untold stories of the greatest minds in history. And don't forget to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.